Well, that didn't take long. As it turns out, all we needed was a new president. Take a look at this graph, gang. This is an inflation graph from Trueflation. Biden inflation is now officially over. Inflation is down to 1.8% as of today. This is data just in from Trueflation. Trueflation is a bit ahead of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So Peter St. Onge, he noted that Trueflation uses 10 million real-time prices drawn directly from sellers, whereas the Consumer Price Index samples 80,000 prices, lagged by about 2 weeks or so. So we're seeing in real time here Trump fixing Biden's inflation in literally 6 weeks. Now we can see it at the micro level as well. This is pretty cool. You may have seen this. Egg prices are finally dropping, according to Trading Economics, after reaching an all-time high of $8.17 per dozen in early March. Egg prices have plummeted to $5.51, which now sits well below the nearly $7 average when President Trump took office in January. So now egg prices are officially lower under Trump than they were under Biden. So this, of course, right here raises the question, what are the Democrats going to do? What are the Democrats going to do now? I mean, if they don't have high egg prices, now what are they going to do? Remember, what's good news for the country is always bad news for the Democrats. They were doing their best to try to blame President Trump for the spike in egg prices, even although Trump inherited an already spiking price of eggs from Joe Biden. I mean, the Biden administration's disastrous decision to slaughter 150 million chickens in an attempt to contain avian flu is what precipitated the price increase, right? You can't kill 150 million egg-laying chickens and not send prices soaring. It was so bad that major restaurant chains like Denny's and Waffle House were forced to actually implement egg surcharges just to stay afloat. Some markets saw prices reach absurd levels. A San Francisco Safeway was reportedly charging $10.99 a dozen. But again, the key here is that these prices started to soar before January 20th. The legacy media, of course, knew that. The bought and paid for media knew it. They ignored it until Trump assumed office. And all of a sudden, well, what do you know? In unison, the media tried to blame Trump. Well, Trump caused an egg shortage somehow. Yeah, well, fortunately, nobody's buying that anymore since people have largely turned off the legacy media. All the latest polls show that their trust and confidence has never been as low as it is right now, and deservedly so. But Trump was indeed very proactive in addressing the price of eggs. Back in February, Newsweek reported how the Trump administration was rolling out a 5-part plan to tackle soaring egg prices, including a $500 million investment in farm biosecurity, $400 million in aid for those hit by the avian flu, and $100 million for vaccine and therapeutic research. It also called for reviewing restrictive state animal welfare regulations and negotiating the import of up to 100 million eggs in the coming months, efforts that are clearly already literally paying off. And it's not just egg prices. Have you seen this? For the third consecutive week in a row, gas prices are down. Now, the average price is now just over $3 a gallon. Right now, as we speak, the price of gas has gone down by nearly 10 cents per gallon from 1 month ago and 37 cents per gallon from a year ago. All 50 states, even California, are now seeing lower prices than they were at this time last year. And right now, we're at the lowest price for gas we've actually seen in 4 years. And prices are only going to continue to go down, especially with the cost of energy diminishing. Bloomberg is reporting that President Trump has asked Saudi Arabia to increase their oil production and lower prices. This was back in January, and they have done so. And Trump, of course, is also ramping up domestic production, doing things like putting the 625 million acres that Biden banned from further oil and gas leases back into play on the balance sheet, as it were. And that's huge because, not only will energy independence keep our nation relatively immune from energy fluctuations around the world, But it's also key to tackling inflation by lowering prices as a whole, since high gas prices are a big component in inflation. That's been one of Trump's mainstays, as you know. Every time he was asked during the campaign, how are you going to lower inflation? His answer was always, we have got to get the price of energy down. We've got to get the price of energy down. Everything goes down once the price of energy goes down. And it looks like we're seeing that happening in real time. Here's a nice breakdown from Wokeness, one of my favorite accounts on X. Border crossings down 93%. Gas prices hit a 4-year low. Eggs down $1.80 per dozen. Job growth 93%. Private up. Job growth up. Inflation down to 1.8%. And then he did add, and the media is just snoozing through all this. So anyway, we do have a bit of a tariff war heating up here. I know some people are a little nervous with that. Trump is going to be imposing an additional 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum in retaliation for Ontario's electricity tariff. Canadians, however, are getting very, very rightly very, very worried over a tariff war with the United States, which their leaders appear to be relatively hell-bent on engaging in. But from what I see, everyone said this is a losing proposition on their end, both Canada and Mexico. Over 75% of Canada's exports go to the United States. Just let that hit you. 75% of Canada's exports go south. They come here. That's nearly 20% of their GDP. It's even worse for Mexico. Nearly 80% of their exports come here to the United States, making up about 40% of their GDP. For America, our exports to both Canada and Mexico combined is not even 3% of our exports. So a tariff war with the United States would hit Canada and Mexico inordinately harder than it would adversely affect us here in the States. So they really don't have any leverage here. Trump knows that, and he knows it's only a matter of time before Mexico and Canada comply. Interestingly, though, we are seeing the vast majority of the American people behind these reciprocal tariffs. I don't know if you've seen the polling on this, but reciprocal tariffs consistently get a 60+ approval among voters, 60+% approval. Voters generally just see it as a fairness issue. So if a nation is taxing us, they just think we should tax them. Reciprocal tariffs are actually very, very popular. And again, the legacy media wants to just make it solely about economics, solely about raising price. This is a hidden tax, all that kind of stuff. Case in point, things got a little heated over tariffs in the White House press room today. Check this out.
Step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs.
Not true.
And I'm curious
he's not doing
why
that.
He's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people, and the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have.
They
don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen in decades, as I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you are trying to test my knowledge of economics and the decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press.
Well, at least they let him in the room. I don't know if they've renamed it the Gulf of America yet. I don't know. But what Caroline Levitt is getting at there is that we are seeing a globalist economic order increasingly replaced by an economic nationalist order. And the key to economic nationalism is that it's ironically far more diverse than globalism. So globalism is actually nothing more than a one-size-fits-all managerial approach to economy and trade. Ironically, it's economic nationalism that is far more diverse, but economic nationalism often gets caricatured as really nothing more than just imposing tariffs on other countries and the like. But you have to remember that tariffs on or taxes or foreign-made goods, is just solely comprising economic nationalism is actually a real misunderstanding of economic nationalism. And that economic nationalism, in that, to the extent that it is associated merely with protectionism and the imposition of tariffs on all foreign goods, what it does is it misses the nationalism part of the economics. Critics often wrongly leave out the nationalist dimension when they reduce economic nationalism to protectionism. What they're doing is they're actually confusing nationalism with statism. So while protectionism certainly involves the state imposing tariffs on certain goods or regulating what can be bought and sold, state activity is not necessarily nationalist. Often the state does things that are very bad for the nation. I mean, there's a clear distinction. Statism is institutional, while nationalism is trans-institutional. Statism deals with the government, whereas nationalism deals with the culture as a whole. And so the important point here is that while economic nationalism may involve protectionism, it can't be reduced to protectionism. Instead, as the name implies, scholars see economic nationalism as an economic approach that's intentionally pursued for the benefit of the culture, the customs, and traditions that collectively comprise the nation. So economic nationalism is a facet really of national identity, where certain kinds of cultures, traditions, religions, ethnicities forge distinctive economic policies in accordance with specific national traits. And so what this means is that economic nationalism can certainly involve protectionist measures, as we're seeing now with President Trump. But as we've seen with, say, Bolsonaro's Brazil a couple of years back, or what we're seeing now with Javier Milei's Argentina, it may involve actually highly libertarian free trade policies. So economic nationalism can involve protectionism, but it can also involve free trade measures, subsidies, controlled markets, free markets. It all just comes down to the needs of the culture. Economic nationalism it literally entails all of the above. It can be very libertarian in some national contexts. It can be highly regulatory in others. The important point here is that the purpose of the economy is now for the protection and perpetuation of a nation's culture, customs, and traditions, not the other way around. The economy is not seen as some sovereign in an economic nationalist view, right? The economy is not some scientifically rationalist system that superimposes itself on nations and cultures, particularly through transnational institutions, which of course then just ends up belittling and relativizing those cultures and religions and traditions. By contrast with economic nationalism, the economy is rightly seen as either as an extension or even subservient to the national and cultural identity, and is therefore to protect and perpetuate such a national and cultural identity. I remember talking to the foreign minister of Brazil, Ernesto Araújo, and he was arguing that, saying, look, our country's been so stagnant under decades of Marxism. We need to unleash our economy through free market principles. And so they saw free market principles as very much behind their version of economic nationalism. And look, I think that's exactly what we're going to be seeing more and more of throughout the world. So in many ways, what we see unfolding here between the United States and Canada and Mexico and the EU and the like, what it does is it signals the end of a one-size-fits-all globalist economics and the emergence of a very diverse worldwide economic nationalisms, I should say. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch it unfold. You all know that I'm very passionate about the fact that we simply can't rescue our nation if we don't first take care of ourselves, and health actually starts with our livers. Now, if you think about it, we throw everything at our livers: cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, Tylenol, statins, cigarettes, you name it. That's why so many of us have a sluggish, fatty liver that makes us gain weight and lose energy. But thanks to today's sponsor, there's a very real solution: Liver Health Formula is an all-natural supplement which contains 12 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. It's manufactured right here in the USA and approved by independent American doctors. And if you click on that link below right now, you can try Liver Health Formula and receive a free bottle of blood sugar formula when you order today. So don't let a fatty liver keep you sluggish and inactive. Gang, you know, for me, this is very, very personal. I myself recently lost over 60 pounds, and I can say it was one of the best decisions I ever made. So now it's your turn. Click on that link below or go to getliverhelp.com/Turley and claim your free bonus gift. That's getliverhelp.com/Turley.
This is why so many people are so mad about it, because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry.
No,
I'm
do not
really angry
apologize.
about this.
No, because this
I'm
is what
really
people
angry.
need to.
Ooh, she's mad. She's big mad. That was Randy Weingarten having a full meltdown on MSNBC, which, of course, is just another typical day at MSNBC. Weingarten is the president of the American Federation of Teachers and has been a major advocate for literally all things woke in our nation's schools. And so given the AFT's relentless commitment to transforming our nation's classroom into left-wing indoctrination centers, it's no surprise that she and her fellow woke activists are absolutely frantic over Trump's plans to abolish the Department of Education. It's being widely reported that the White House is indeed moving to eliminate the Department of Education, and as expected, the woke left is in full panic mode, and for good reason. The elimination of the Department of Education isn't just a bureaucratic shift. It's a radical challenge mustered by parents and patriots alike, standing up against a system that has undermined the values of our education for far too long. Now, it's true, every year the Department of Education's budget's gone up, all the while national aptitude scores have gone down. But the battle over education is about so much more than just department budgets and test scores. How we educate our children is inextricably linked to our culture. Education is enculturation, hence why the cultural Marxist left is so adamant about indoctrinating our kids. As it turns out, the battle for education is nothing less than the battle for the soul of our culture. And we simply can't revive a culture of faith, family, and freedom without reviving a comparable culture in our classrooms. Well, joining me today is someone who's been on the front lines of revitalizing the education system in America for decades now. Doug Wilson is a founding member of the Association of Classical and Christian Schools. He's a pastor and author whose insights and actionable solutions have already helped countless families reclaim their children's education. Doug, welcome back. Great to see you as always.
Yeah, good to be with you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, well, what can we say, man? We are living in amazing times. So
that's right. Christmas every morning.
It's Christmas every morning. It really is. I mean, we saw the overturn a few years ago? I think it'll be 3 years ago this June. We saw the overturning of the sacred cow of secular liberalism, Roe v. Wade. Now it looks like we're about to see the abolishing of the Department of Education, which many have argued is the single most far-left department in the government, which is saying something. But Doug, as someone who's been on the forefront of both those issues, where you dedicated your life to restoring a culture of life, as well as restoring a true flourishing education, how important is it to once and for all just end the Department of Education?
I think it's crucial. It was the department was established under Carter, and I think every Republican president since has made noises about how good it would be to get rid of it, and yet that has been approached as sort of a political thing that you've got to get through Congress and jolly people along, and you can't really do it that way. Right. It's got to be a chainsaw approach, yeah. And that's what Trump is doing with the Doge efforts and the way he's come in, having learned how not to get managed. He was managed in lots of ways in his first term, and he's come in resolved not to be managed. And I think that the targeting the Department of Education is brilliant, because liberals, if liberals were a cancer, they know how to go for the lymph nodes, and the lymph nodes are the education system, because that transmits all the problems everywhere else. So whenever you see a mob of economic illiterates rioting or throwing bricks or protesting, in disruptive ways, you should look at them and tell yourself, those people 20 years ago were being educated somewhere, or maybe 15 years ago. Somebody taught them, and clearly from the results, not very well. and they didn't teach that well. If you look at the goals of the Department of Education and goals of the progressive left, they have taught them very well indeed. They're getting what they want, which is drones for the hive mind. That's what they're after, and that's what they're getting. But for those who want education to establish and ground and root citizens of a free republic, the education system has failed spectacularly. Yes. And one of the best things to do, it's not the only thing we need to do, but one of the best things we can do, the place where we need to start, is to get the federal government out, completely out. And there's an important distinction to make. If you look at departments like Department of State or the Department of Defense, these are legitimate functions of government, and they're constitutional functions of government. And the fact that they're constitutional and biblical and fine does not keep bloat and excess and waste from getting into them. And so we should sick Doge on the Pentagon as much as on state, as much as on the Department of Transportation and so on. But there are other departments that the federal government shouldn't be involved with at all. So, and education is one of them. The primary responsibility for education lies with parents. Right. That's the first layer. They are and so consequently, any school system that you have ought to be a school system that is responsive to parental input. So if you don't do that, what's going to happen, right, in the current system, if a parent complains about, the witchcraft segment in their kindergartner's curriculum, I don't think that you ought to be teaching kindergartners how to cast spells and all that. That parent can expect to find himself on the national news in the next few days, as someone wanting to ban books. Right. And the way to move away from this is to personalize education, and that means pushing it toward the source, which is marriage, family. And the closer, so in my thinking, the ideal is private schools that are directly responsive to parents. But you could even have public schools where the school board was local, and if somebody does something inflammatory or evil or wicked, parents can show up at the school board meeting and not be put on an FBI, not be put on an FBI watch list. And
featured on CNN as a far right-wing activist. And
correct. And all he was doing was objecting to Bruno being in the junior high girls' bathroom. Right? So he's clearly a terrorist because.
Clearly. Well, again, these people were educated somewhere too. I think it comes full circle there. But I love what you're talking about, because it sets up my next question for you, where you're talking about centralized control, just the systemic element to this. I think you're familiar with Orrin McIntyre's book, The Total State.
Yeah, I've read it. Good book.
It's a great book. We had him on not too long ago talking about just the whole logic developing the logic of managerialism. Is that what you think is going on here? Sort of like you're talking about the lymph nodes level, or just the connective tissue level? I'll find some other anatomical metaphor here, but in other words, is this moment that we're seeing in the abolition of the education department, is that revealing a broader struggle between centralized top-down one-size-fits-all power versus local parental authority in education?
Yes, and here's a corollary. There's a great quote by Thomas Sowell that I can't quote verbatim, but he says there's nothing more ridiculous than to give decision-making authority to people who pay no price for being wrong.
Wow, that's good.
Okay, so and in any bureaucracy, let me put it this way: nobody ever lynched a committee.
It's true.
Right. Committees are, they're ongoing. They make decisions. Everything's minuted and carefully kept, and it goes in a file cabinet. And it's a way of depersonalizing decision-making process such that nobody is ever held responsible.
Right.
Okay. And let's say you've got a family that homeschools, if you have a homeschooling family and the kids come out deficient in every area of education, well, we know who taught them, right? There's when parents take on the challenge of homeschooling, it's personal.
Yes.
The teachers have a face and a name.
Yes.
And in a private school, you've got the same sort of thing, only a little bit broadened,
a little farther removed. Yeah.
But parents can vote with their feet.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they can say the school's not doing what it's advertising that it can do. The standards are slipping. We're going to start another school, a competitive school, or we're going to go down the street to another school. You've got choices, and but when you remove choice, which is what government schools want to do, when you remove choice, what happens is information transfer is now being run by the Department of Motor Vehicles. Right. And you've just got to submit to whatever it is they're doing and take it in the teeth.
Right.
Well, it's just gotten progressively worse. You said in the intro that the education department has gotten swollen and educational accomplishment in the United States has plummeted, gone down.
Right.
So whatever it is we're doing, it's not working.
It's not working. Yeah. It's so amazing you say that, because I think that's one of the, I guess, benefits of being part of the permanent political class, is you're above responsibility. You can never be held accountable for anything. You're above the law. Hunter Biden, for heaven's sakes. I mean, it's and it just seems to be that's the entire system. If anything, the more you fail, the more you get promoted. It's a bizarre kind of inversion to real life.
Right. When you look at, so if you look at back over the last 10 years, let's say, and let's take an arbitrary lowest learner with the IRS. Business. From that time down to the present, how many dirty deeds have we seen done at the federal level by bureaucracies, and astonishing levels of misbehavior. And how many people are in jail?
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, there's an almost inverse relationship between how many dirty deeds were done and how many people have actually been held accountable for it. And people will act as though you are sending them to the gulag when you simply point out what they've done.
or ask them to list the 5 things they did last week. It's like,
yeah, exactly. This torment will never stop. Or this
Nazism, fascism. That's right.
This is Orwell all over again.
Oh, it's so true. But I love that scene with Pete Hegseth, sitting next to Trump at the at their first cabinet meeting, and Trump kind of put his hand on Pete's arm and said, I'm not telling you to fire anybody who was involved in that failed Afghanistan withdrawal, a few years back, but I know you are going to fire them. I know you are. You're going to do it. It's just because apparently nobody ever got held accountable for anything incompetent or failed or disasters where people died. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, not only do they not get held accountable, but in many cases they get promotions.
They get promotions, right. It's insane. One of the key themes of your vision of education that I learned when I joined ACCS 2 decades ago, I guess my gray hair is showing, but that a lot of parents actually listening right now have never thought about is how you've consistently argued that education is never neutral. Right. It's always shaping students towards some worldview. It's never just information. It's always about formation. And again, it's so interesting. Pete Hegseth, again, our new Secretary of Defense. How cool is that? But right. Christmas every day, right? A lot of people don't know that he a couple of years back actually co-authored a book with our mutual friend David Goodwin, the president of ACCS, on precisely this topic of how education is never neutral. And this is a mind. Yeah, please
hit the pause button there. You might say, well, someone might say that doesn't matter because he's the Secretary of Defense. Well, I don't know how many bases around the world have schools.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not just, I'm glad that the education department is being, it looks like it's going to be eradicated, but you can make an argument for a certain governmental responsibility for schools at bases, Air Force bases, Army bases, and that sort of thing. And if you don't believe that DEI crap has gotten into those schools, you're just hallucinating. And I think people should people who are interested in education should keep a close eye on what happens at defense.
That's excellent. Yeah.
Okay. What happens at defense? Because there are a lot of schools there.
Yeah. With 100,000 troops in Europe and the like. Absolutely. That's huge. And so that leads exactly to my question here. So, because I think in some ways, the abolition of the education department may be just kind of the beginning of maybe a little bit of a hard lesson for all of us, in that how much have I relied on not really understanding education to educate my kid? So, right. So, in your view, how do you see the current public education system as it stands actually indoctrinating students? What kind of worldview is it shaping? And then what could parents and communities do to counteract that?
So that's a great question. And you touched on an aspect of this where a generation ago, let's say 20, 25 years ago, Christian parents had their kids in the government schools, and the line was, well, education is neutral. Now, you said that we've been arguing that education is not neutral, but they successfully convinced everybody that the raw content, 2 + 2 = 4, George Washington was the first president, things like that. All of those things are true, regardless of whether you're a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a secularist. Okay. So we just deliver the content. We don't take sides religiously, and we deliver each child a bowl of oatmeal, and that oatmeal is knowledge.
Right.
And then each child takes their oatmeal home, and the parents get out the condiment of their religion, the Hindu curry or the Christian Tabasco, or whatever it is, and they flavor the knowledge to suit them.
Right.
At home. Right. But we can all agree on this common ground belief that knowledge is knowledge is knowledge.
Right.
Okay. But that's simply false. Right. All right.
Right.
It's simply false. And the government educator will say, well, why are you Christians complaining? We didn't say one word for or against Jesus. We said nothing about Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, today, the mask has come off. Today, there is a lot of open witchcraft, Satanism, that sort of thing. I was just talking to a gentleman who is a college professor in Arizona, and he said there's multiple courses with witchcraft in the title, and none with Christianity in the title. History of Christianity. So the mask has come off in recent years, but let's say we rewind to the point where the mask had not yet come off, and people were still able to say with a straight face, we're not saying anything for or against Jesus at all. All we're doing is teaching you that 2 + 2 = 4, and George Washington was the first president. And I would respond as a Christian, no, you're teaching something by omission. You're saying that whatever is the case, whatever it is that I'm telling you, whether or not Jesus Christ rose from the dead is irrelevant.
Irrelevant, right?
Okay. Well, but Christians believe that Christ rising from the dead is of monumental relevance to absolutely everything. It's a different world. So if a man was executed and laid in the grave for 3 days and then came back from the dead, the one thing I can assure you is that man owns the world.
Right.
That man is the king of the world. Right. Now, but even on a more simpler level, someone's going to say, yeah, but proof to 2 + 2 = 4, right? And I'd say, well, if you're a Hindu, how can that be true when all is one? But there's no such thing as two. Two is Maya, illusion. Four is Maya, illusion. How can we have math? How can you count, right? And this is the thing that a lot of people think, that the inheritance of Christendom, the heritage that we have from Christendom, is just the way people are, but it's not. It's the way Christian civilization is.
Yes.
And so, and this is the striking thing: the heritage of the West, and there are many great blessings, but the central heritage of Western civilization is this: it has combined in an exquisite way that you don't see elsewhere, form and freedom together.
Yes.
Okay. Unbelieving cultures can be all form, totalitarianism. It's all imposed form. Do what we say, or it can be Thunderdome. It can be all freedom, anarchy, chaos, a cafeteria food fight. So you can have freedom but no form, or you can have form but no freedom.
Right.
And this goes back to Parmenides and Heraclitus. Actually, Parmenides is a monist. All is one. Everything is one. Heraclitus, the world is like 10 tons of confetti dumped into a tornado.
Right.
And everything is chaos. The whirl is king. But it was the Christians who, and this was the ancient philosophical problem of the one and the many. What is prior? What has seniority? Is it the one or the many?
Yeah.
And Christians came along and they were asked the question, and they said, yes.
Yeah. Right. Right.
God in 3 persons, blessed Trinity.
Yes.
And so for us as Christians, ultimate reality is form and freedom together, right? Unity and diversity together in everlasting union. And then this God, the triune God, created the world, and we are privileged to imitate him, think God's thoughts after him. And what grew out of that was the heritage of Christian liberty, where you have the maximum amount of structure and the maximum amount of freedom together. And this is something that the late Francis Schaeffer pointed to again and again and again: form and freedom together. And so when Christian parents undertake to discipline their kids and teach their kids and bring their kids up, this opportunity that they have is one of teaching discipline and independence.
Right.
And you don't have that apart from a Christian worldview.
It's one or the other, right? Yeah.
One or the other. Yeah. And so in my recent book, Keep Your Kids, I'm arguing that you have to equip your children to stand up against this therapeutic sentimentalism that is contributing to the chaos of our society around us. Right. And so when you teach gospel and law and gospel, and the kids are forgiven for their sins, and they're growing up within a defined structure, but that is a defined structure that prioritizes and values individual liberty, the results are astonishing.
Yeah. It's so, and I was even just thinking about just how the whole notion of our republic was an attempt by our founding fathers to bring together law and liberty. How do we
Yes.
bring law and liberty together? And the very fact that they're even asking that question evokes itself a Christian worldview. And I guess I guess we're inflicted with a bit of amnesia. We don't quite recognize just how much Christianity has forged our whole notion of what it even means to be educated.
Yes, and it forged our idea of what it means to be educated. It also forged our idea of what it means to be an American,
Right.
and so we have basically forgotten all that. We have sort of drifted away, and we have, like the guy who's born on third base and thought he hit a triple. We have taken all of these things for granted. We've taken our wealth for granted, like the prodigal son.
Yes.
We've run away from our father. We took the inheritance. We ran away from our father. And it was just in the last 5 years that we started to run out of money.
Yeah.
The prodigal son didn't run out of money his first weekend away from home.
Right.
This venture that he was undertaking seemed to be working for a while.
Right.
The girls all liked him.
Right.
The people at the taverns all liked him. He was the most popular guy around. But at some point, the bills come due.
Yeah.
At some point, you run out of money. At some point, this bad idea comes crashing down. And I see a lot of American Christians in the last 5 years staring at pig food saying, how on earth did we get here?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just boil it down. We got here because we forgot God.
Yeah.
That's all right. We Deuteronomy warns about this. When you go into the land and you have wells, deep wells and vineyards and houses, and God bestows all this wealth on you, you forget God and you say, my power, my wisdom, my might has gotten me the wealth. No.
And it's so fascinating too, because I guess we had that amnesia when they told us we can have a religiously neutral public square. And then you go to your schools today, classrooms, and you see BLM posters up and pride flags everywhere. And, the teacher all decked out and all things woke. And all of a sudden you realize you're always going to have a religion, aren't you? There's always going to be a God of your classroom. And if you get rid of the true and living God, you're just going to get a fraud.
That's right. As Dylan put it in one of his saner moments, you got to serve somebody. It may be the devil and it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody.
That's right.
And the other thing is, going back to my oatmeal illustration, where everybody's being given their neutral bowls of oatmeal. In recent years, we've been discovering that it was not neutral oatmeal at all. They were lacing it all with cocaine.
Right. That's true. And then they create the campus protests and the like. Yeah. It's astonishing. I do think we have such an amazing opportunity in front of us to really reevaluate how we've been doing education for the last several decades and where we went astray. You've been a part of this for decades now with the Association of Classical Christian Schools. You've watched it grow. It's blossomed, Doug. It's blossomed. I just can't even imagine it. I mean, our Secretary of Defense wrote a book advocating classical education for the nation. It's just the numbers that and it's because it's of the Lord. It's because it enables us to be truly human when we embody this what we call in our classical school the paideia, this enculturation of faith, family, and freedom in the most rich way possible, in a 2,500 year Athens, Jerusalem, Rome, all synthesized through Christ curriculum. I mean, it's astonishing to see the kind of student that's formed at the end of it all. It's amazing. And it seems that can be, I mean, that is the real renaissance that I think our country's looking for.
Yeah, it really is amazing, because when I wrote Recovering the Lost Tools of Learning, I think it was published in 91, it got a surprising reaction. And all of a sudden we were getting mail, because it was part of a Turning Point Worldview series that I wrote this. But there was one on going to the movies, and one on literature, and one on banking, and all these different things. And people would read the one on movies and they'd put it down and say, well, let's go to the movies, honey, and try to think with a Christian worldview. But when they put my book down, they said, we have to start a school. And then they started calling and started writing. And what happened was I started to get a volume of education related mail. And so I couldn't keep up with it. I handed it to my wife, Nancy, and said, Nancy, could you just handle the education correspondence here? So ACCS began at our kitchen table, basically.
Wow.
We're not to despise the day of small beginnings. And we look at the hundreds of schools now, and the tens of thousands of students being educated this way. And we look at the prospect in the next generation of hundreds of thousands more being educated this way. And the great blessing about this is that we're in a position now to simply point at the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
And we can say, all these newfangled ideas that come out of your teachers' colleges, we went back to the basics. We went back to the fundamental rudiments that built our civilization. And look.
Yeah. It speaks for itself. It's so beautiful. It is. I've always loved it. I miss it. I miss going to the conferences. I'll have to go back soon. For families, those who are frustrated, who are listening here, who are just frustrated with the current state of schools, but feel overwhelmed, by taking back control. They're seeing this as perhaps an opportunity. Pastor Doug, what actionable steps can just someone, a parent, maybe even a grandparent, take right now to reclaim their kids' education?
Yeah, I would say that it varies on whether you've got preschool kids, kids in school age, or if you're a grandparent with grown children and you're wondering, how can I be a godly grandparent in this? So the answer would vary, but education is right at the center of this. And I would say there are some exceptions to this, difficult cases make bad law, but generally speaking, I would tell parents to get their kids out of the government schools and say, you need to take ownership of what's going into your kid's head. Okay. You can't just turn it over to somebody else and say, here she is, here he is. Go ahead and teach him about everything. Right. So parents need to take ownership, and fathers particularly need to take the leadership in this. And they have to do it not as this ideological commitment where we're just going to yank you out of the schools. And I'd reference the book again, Keep Your Kids, where it's, as I never tire saying this, your job as a parent is not to get your kids to conform to your standard. The job of the parent is to bring the kids to love the standard. Yeah, that's right. That's the thing we're after, is
the ordered loves, right?
The ordered loves. You want if you love God, you want your kids to love God also. If you love Christ, you want your kids to love Christ also. You want your children to love what you love, value what you value, live the way that you taught them to live. And one of the problems that we have of the wide diversity between despairing parents or discouraged parents and kids going in another direction entirely is because we outsourced the process of educating and teaching and child formation that ought not to have been outsourced.
Right. Doug, we've got a bunch of links down below where people can check out your work. Do you want to just direct anyone into a particular site?
Sure thing. If you go to my blog, which is dougwills.com, we arranged it so that there's a portal if you unfold the front page, there's a portal to pretty much everything I'm involved with. Right. And since we've been talking about education, there's a portal to ACCS, there's a portal to New St. Andrews College, and there's a portal to Logos School. And you can go to these three places and see what we're doing in the realm of education. And then you can go to Canon Press, also there, and Canon Plus, which has a lot of resources. When we started educating our children in the classical Christian method, there were no resources to speak of, but there's an abundance. There's a world. There's a world of resources now.
Yeah, full publishing houses and the like. It's
right.
it's astonishing, gang. We are in undeniably amazing times, a time of enormous reform and transition. And now education is taking center stage in this cultural renewal. We simply cannot reclaim culture if we don't reclaim the culture of the classroom. So make sure to rise to the extraordinary occasion we're in for such a time as this. Take action now by clicking on the links below and check out Pastor Doug's rich and informative website and all the resources that he and classical education have to offer in this incredible time of cultural renewal. Again, the links are in the description, so make sure to visit those sites and be a part of shaping the future of education for our kids and for our culture. Doug, I don't get to see you much anymore since I retired from the classroom, but at the risk of embarrassing you, you are a hero to me and to so many of us. So thank you so much for everything that you've done. I can't thank you enough for your faithfulness and your vision. I'm so grateful to see what God has done through you. So praise God and thank you.
Well, thank you and thank the Lord.
Thank you and thank the Lord. Amen. Thank you, Doug. Hey, gang, we often talk about how we can maintain and build up the conservative way of life. And one crucial aspect of that is your routine. Staying strong physically, mentally. It's not just about living longer. It's about living better, which starts with a good night's sleep. Now, I've partnered with Beam because they're a health and wellness company that's put in the time and rigorous research to craft science-backed solutions that truly optimize every system in your body from the moment you wake up until you lay your head down to sleep. Now, I've been using Beam Dream every single night for a while now, and it has completely changed the way I sleep. The endless news cycles, the uncertainty about our future, the weight of it all. I got to be honest, it gets to me. It left me tossing and turning for hours. I have a very hard time turning my brain off. But gang, seriously, I'm not kidding you. Since taking Dream, I literally crash at night. I fall asleep so fast and I sleep deeply and soundly all throughout the night. Beam Dream is made with the highest quality sleep-promoting ingredients to help you unwind and get that deep sleep we all need and deserve. In fact, it's become a nightly ritual of mine that I look forward to each and every day. If I may make a suggestion, I love their brownie batter flavor. You got to try it with a little cream in there. It's beautiful. Plus, I never wake up feeling groggy the next morning. I wake up feeling rested and ready to give my all, making a huge difference in how I show up every single day. Right now, you can save up to 35% off with my exclusive Beam discount. Just click the link below or scan the QR code on the screen and use code TURLEY at checkout. It's time to stop letting sleepless nights hold you back. Transform your sleep and your day with Dream because you deserve it, gang. Click on that link or scan that QR